Hello, everyone. Welcome to Feedstuffs 365. I'm Sarah Muirhead, and Greg Soulje is back with us here to start the new year, giving us a look at the short-term weather and what's ahead. Welcome, Greg.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Nice to be with you here in this, for some, kind of a back to work Tuesday after a couple of weeks off for the holiday season. But folks in the homestead, the farmstead, and even in the weather business, we keep going at it through the holiday season, but a
So
slightly
true.
slower pace.
Exactly. Well, let me throw your slides up there and take it away.
All right. Okay. Welcome to a January 6th. Actually, lots to talk about here on what continues to be more or less a great day's worth of weather. If it were March 6th around here, that's the way it kind of looks and feels. Don't worry, just a slight deviation in the longer range stuff for folks who want to get a more robust winter season going. We'll set you up here on the timetable of that going forward here a little bit later on in the broadcast. But most of the organized snow is raining up into central Wisconsin. Some snow melt going on over the more dominant snowpack, which is really focused around the Great Lakes region, northernmost areas of the Corn Belt. Dry weather continues on over bare ground areas and slightly drier than usual grounds, let's say down to the Ozarks and far southern Illinois. Before the weak cool front goes through, they will once again top the 60-degree mark this afternoon. So an unusually mild, very comfortable go of it with outdoor work, a little less in the way of maybe livestock stress and certainly feed requirements around here. Footing, maybe a different issue in some areas. And boy, if you wanted some drought recharge for maybe the right reason in the form of some rains, those are coming across a good part of the southern and eastern Corn Belt later on this week. Parts of West Texas and cotton country, livestock country will be up around the 80-degree mark this afternoon. We've had some spells of these downslope winds as jet stream winds are zonal, as we call the weather business, west to east. So we've had some hits to 55, 60 miles per hour and higher west of the Black Hills, down across the front range of Wyoming and parts of Colorado. And that's helped to send temperatures up over bare ground areas of Nebraska as well. They'll be up around the 60-degree mark this afternoon. You know the other boot and hoof is going to drop, but enjoy it while you may get caught up on maybe moving feed and supplies and checking on some of those structural areas when winter arrives and returns, and it will do just that. Anyway, across the southern states, despite the quiet nature to weather, and we've talked about this before, sometimes these La Nina setups are not real conducive to getting frequent organized moisture patterns going over parts of the south and southeast. We had that a few weeks ago. Things have backed off, so still ongoing dryness and drought. And pasture lands have been suffering because of that. They've had frost and freeze down there over the Christmas holiday break. And stream and river levels surprisingly lower than they should be. In any event, readings up around the 80-degree mark. The eastern flank of some of that heat through Texas will move through the Big Bend areas of Texas and across the western Gulf Coast for the day today. And across the western states, for a change, some snow in some of the higher peaks of the Cascades, the northern and central Rockies. Back in the early part of November, we had some frequent weather systems, but then everything has shifted south. It's been a high snow level, most of the time above 7,500 feet, 7,000 feet. And so debris slides and flooding has been the story across some of the mountain ranges into central and southern California, and not much the way of any significant snowfall or snowpack on the higher peaks too of the southwestern mountains, i.e. the southern Rockies and even the Wasatch Range. So things are a little bit up in the air. Folks are already talking about runoff shortages and reservoir shortages come springtime season off the mountain slopes of the western states. The Argentina and Brazil updates, we typically do this. We'll do these updates moving forward here on Friday, but this is from a week ago, if you didn't tune in the broadcast, and across Argentina, except for southern areas, not much going on in a worrisome standpoint, at least for those folks down there. Of course, here across North America, we'd like to have a little complication from a market standpoint in Argentina and Brazil, but not much really going on. Southern areas, soil moisture continues to decline. Northern areas are in relatively good shape with the crop growth and development. Winter wheat harvest continues to move along there, probably better than 90% complete. Again, this is data from about a week or so ago. And overall, unfortunately, there's nothing but good news from a crop growth and moisture standpoint coming out of Brazil. Northern and really across all areas that were slightly drier across southern Brazil have seen significant moisture. There's been some degree of upper 90-degree heat over some of those drier reaches before the rains came on through. Crop conditions are relatively good and improving because of recent rains. Of course, the rains won't do much to help out, much like it is across the domestic areas of this country, help out on some of the later development of corn and soybeans down there. So unfortunately, there's no great headlines as it applies to market conditions for us here in the U.S. as it applies to weather down across South America. We'll have an update on that situation, by the way, coming up on Friday. There is the infrared picture. Tough to pick up clouds and clear skies and snow cover when you take a look at the visible satellite picture, and plus still some low sun angles this time of the year. But you can see a weather system through the upper Midwest and one through the Pacific Northwest and the vanguard clouds to the next little piece of energy moving across the southwestern reaches of the country. A little more of a Midwestern look and maybe tough to pick up here. We'll work on our graphics here going forward, but a lot of haze and fog and trap visibilities and moisture and a warm atmosphere up aloft. Not much of any significant winds, lower levels of the atmosphere, and of course either snow melt or moisture laden grounds as well over some areas of the Midwest. So fog the story through the plain states. There's some plots of some snow and freezing rain through Wisconsin and Michigan, and Gulf Coast areas are fairly quiet as well. And there's the spread on temperatures. Those isotherms might be tough to pick up. We're trying to overlay that on top of the visible or infrared satellite picture. But in any event, the coldest of the year is up across areas of northern North Dakota near the Canadian border. They're in the teens there currently. The 32-degree isotherm as far north and west as the Nebraska Panhandle, 40s into West Texas cotton versus already this morning temps in the 40s and 50s over the eastern and southern Corn Belt, and 60s as again to the Gulf Coast areas. No sign of that cold air for now coming southward over the next 3 or 4 days. There's the weather maps and charts for this morning. Weak weather system and a subtle wind shift and maybe a subtle drop in temperatures. No big push of Arctic air, but a bit of a drop off in temps across the western Corn Belt for the day today. Eastern areas later this afternoon. The cold air with that frontal boundary draped across Montana and North Dakota. A little snow there. That's the rain snow mix and some freezing rain through Wisconsin, parts of Michigan at the current time. And for a change, a little more Pacific moisture into the northwestern reaches of the country. A couple of showers around the Bay Area. This afternoon, again, rain as far north as Lambeau Field up there towards Green Bay into the Thumb area of Michigan. Some of those ski resorts up there towards Boyne Mountain will have a snow melt going on and some rain on top of that for the day-to-day. Little mist and drizzle across parts of the Midwest and probably some fog areas as well. Little mixed moisture across parts of Wisconsin. Otherwise, most of the action, and it's not a lot to speak of, into the Pacific Northwest. That will continue in through tonight as the rain, the drizzle, the wet snowflakes, some of that freezing rain as well lingers across the Great Lakes areas. We'll probably awaken with some areas of low clouds and fog again tomorrow morning, and temperatures generally above freezing over much of the Corn Belt back west of the plains. A pretty good plume of moisture in 2 areas, actually into the northeast of New England, with some snow across upstate New York and north and east of the Finger Lakes region, and some snow across the higher peaks of Montana and Idaho. That'll be probably above about, again, 7,000 feet. Coastal rain into Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. 2 areas of moisture beginning to pick up. Those are going to take aim, by the way, at the plains and Corn Belt going forward. You can see a weather system making the turn across the upper Rio Grande Valley. Organized rains for the desert Southwest, including Arizona, New Mexico, West Texas. Some of those key drought areas will certainly benefit from that. The snow levels will be high across the central Rockies. They'll be falling some across the northern Rockies and the Cascades. So we're back into a southeast to south wind. And if you can just rid yourself of low clouds and fog to start off the day, very mild air across a wide area of the plains and Corn Belt expected for the day tomorrow. But then tomorrow, or I should say by tomorrow night, late into Thursday morning, look at the plume of rain expanding. You would think it'd be snow this time of the year, and that will be all liquid form. No freezing, no snow on the ground, no frost or freeze on the ground. Temperatures well above freezing across those rain areas of Illinois, Missouri, and points on southward. And that is the vanguard to a significant rain, drought easing rain. Can't believe I'm saying that here in the early days of January across the western and southwestern Corn Belt, parts of the eastern and southern plains. Snow levels dropping, some snow across the peaks of Arizona, New Mexico, and points on northward. But again, pretty abysmal snowfall totals so far this wintertime season. Next 48 hours, you can see upwards of half to 3/4 and pushing close to an inch of rain into eastern Oklahoma. Same with the desert Southwest, same with the southern reaches of California, and some of that moisture as well, generally into the 1/4 to half-inch category out of Wisconsin and Michigan. And that'll change over to snow again across the northeast of New England, and some freezing rain and sleet. And you can see the moisture plume into the Pacific Northwest. That was the snow cover, by the way, back on December 9th. We just thought we'd keep that in there, put a monthly perspective on it. And there it is for the morning of the 6th of January here. Just pockets across northern Illinois. That'll be melting away over the next couple of days. Most of the dominant snow cover basically north of Bismarck, the Twin Cities, maybe the thumb area of Michigan on northward. We'll begin to bring that southward around at least parts of the plains and western Corn Belt later on this week, with two weather systems, one across the Pacific Northwest, general 2 to 6 inch water equivalency out there, two mid to late week storms, the first one moving out of the deep south into the southeastern states and southern sections of the Corn Belt, and there may be close to an inch of rain there, a more dominant feature over the central and southern Rockies, out of the plains and across the Great Lakes, and especially impacting the northern and western Corn Belt Friday into Saturday, winding down on Sunday, which will generate at least some degree of modest snowfall. 2 to 4, 4 to 6, something like that in that range. So kind of a low-grade winter storm, surprisingly, for parts of the plains and western Corn Belt going forward. In any event, there are temperatures today that will feature 40s and 50s, about 15, 20 degrees above average across the plains and Corn Belt locales. By the time we get into Friday around here, some cooling with that system across the west and southwest. We're still pedaling 40s and 50s over the Midwest, 30s and upper 20s across parts of the northern plains. And then by the time we get into early next week, daytime readings are generally into the 30s and 40s, some cooling over the southeastern reaches of the country. And again, temperatures generally at or above freezing going through the middle and late parts of the week across the middle part of the country, across the Ohio Valley and Corn Belt locales. No real significant cooling. By that, we mean readings down into more seasonal levels of teens and 20s until we get into the early parts of next week. And that will be relatively short-lived. But again, changes are coming. The upper air over the next 5 days features that system. You can see a little buckle over the southwestern states that'll merge with a feature through the northern plains. And so that coalescence or converging of those wind fields and jet stream patterns will get a pretty decent low going over Saturday and Sunday over the Great Lakes, eastern Corn Belt. Again, primarily rain, snow for the northern and western Corn Belt, upper Midwest. There'll be a healthy dose of wind as well, not only in the backside of this weather system as cooler to colder air rushes in, and it's just a return to seasonal temperatures at worst. But on the flip side, warmer side, yeah, there's another return to moderation from the cold quickly. Wind blowing again over the western Corn Belt, northern and central plains. So there'll be a kind of a roller coaster ride of temperatures, no long-term frost or freeze going in the ground. So with that wet snowfall and or rain, keeping an eye on footing issues for livestock, heavy equipment usage. Yes, we will firm it up and freeze it up, and that's probably beginning at some point by the 12th to 15th of the month of January. We'll talk about that in a second. In any event, you can see that system between Friday and Saturday moving from the southern plains into the upper Midwest, and it's not really an intrusion of Arctic air. That high comes out of the western states, the Pacific West, and so temperatures, again, are relatively easy to take for early to mid-January. Increasing west-northwesterly winds on the backside of the system, and it'll rain snow as far south and east and as late as Saturday to Sunday over the northern and eastern Corn Belt, but back into a south and southwesterly wind, and a pretty healthy, vigorous one Monday, Tuesday next week brings about another rush of mild air and jet stream winds coming down the northern and central Rockies. That Chinook warming effect, if you will. And so, again, going into at least the mid to late stretches of next week, we're in great shape from a comfort standpoint for livestock and outdoor workers. There is the organized rain, and there may be some totals pushing a couple of inches into parts of the central and southern Corn Belt, a couple of stronger storms into parts of the southern Corn Belt down through Dixie. Of course, we had that a couple of weeks ago with some isolated tornadic activity into parts of Illinois. We'll keep an eye on that, but farther south going forward here later on this week. And an inch or two, and that should be virtually all rain, including snow melt. So keep an eye on ponding, standing water. Some of these area streams and rivers might go into ice jamming effects. So keep an eye on maybe a rise in water and or ice levels in some lowland ag areas of the Midwest, the Great Lakes areas as well. And again, moisture for the Pacific Northwest and winding down by the middle part of the week into the southwestern reaches of the country. Drop monitor from last the week, Thursday, the 30th, we've had some modest improvement over parts of the eastern and southern Corn Belt, mainly along and south of I-70. Still these ongoing areas of extreme drought, west of Champaign, over towards Ball State, around Muncie and Warsaw, Indiana, and into the northwestern reaches of Maumee Valley of northwestern Ohio. But and we kind of concur with this. This was the outlook that came out on the 31st. Weather Service put out their seasonal drought outlook, and we are certainly on board with this. guess it may come in a level and form we may not necessarily want to enjoy, but additional drought relief, we should be able to get into the start of the growing and planting season when we can get out there and get going in a much improved soil column over a wide area of the eastern and southern Corn Belt and some of those key drought-ridden areas. We'll get quickly here through the 6 to 10 day and 8 to 14 day outlook. You can see a ridge over the western part of the country, dip in the jet stream over the eastern third of the country. If you catch this here, generally weather forecasters can, again, these are the government models, but for good talking points, and again, we'll have our live stream coming up a week from this Wednesday. You can see that ridge actually back up, a retrogression. That happens in the weather business. That's because those jet stream winds are going to come in more direct out of Western Canada, the Northwestern Territories. So it's going to be a nibbling away of cold air that actually builds southward pieces and bits of it that come southward, and that's going to set the stage for an increasingly winter-like weather pattern, more wintry, you should say, over much of the northern and eastern plains, Corn Belt locales, and points east and south going forward. But we're going to have to get past the 12th and closer to the 14th or 15th of January. Until then, enjoy another modest warm-up, in quotes, wind-blown over the northern and central plains. Those temperatures begin to abate, wind down, diminish more seasonal levels of temperatures over the eastern third of the country, including the Corn Belt locales. We do get into a quieter weather picture if you want to get caught up on movement of feed and supplies and ready to go for the return of the winter season, and a little more normalized outbreak of moisture across the plains and west of the Missouri going forward by the middle stretch of the month. Going forward here, this is the outlook over the next 3 to 4 weeks. Again, model generated, but the right talking points. It's more of a northwest to southeast clipper style setup that brings about this return of temperatures. There's still lots of wintertime in the tank. Same with precipitation on the increase. 2 areas that's upsloping through the northern and central high plains and northern and central Rockies. So we think there's an Arctic air mass there, and there's at least the southern extent of that into the Great Lakes region and eastern Corn Belt. So the bottom line is don't get lulled into complacency on this very almost March-like weather pattern. We'll have the update and really talk more about we think is a quickly, maybe quicker than anyone's letting on to, winding down of La Nina. And we'll go forward here on what our rest of the winter outlook and spring outlook will be on that update on the live stream as we get together a week from tomorrow on Wednesday.
Very good. So enjoy the warm temperatures. Watch out for that. Watch out for that mud.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
Definitely going to be out there.
Yeah, don't be tracking it everywhere. But as we say frequently, and I know they do it in the weather or the livestock business, and it drives Max Armstrong crazy when I say it, the other boot and or hoof is going to drop. So
exactly. Very good. All right. Thank you, Greg. We'll catch up with you later this week.
Take care.